Hello and welcome back to our educational video series designed to help protect families properly. Larry Hoover is back with us today from Lewis Meyer Insurance Brokers, and today we're going to hear about common issues with cottage properties. So Larry, tell us what you have seen.
Thanks very much for sharing this with your audience, Maureen. I really appreciate it, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm a bit of a different person in terms of P&C, home and auto and stuff and so on. I do something called policy audits. So I don't just say, hey, let me give you a quote and see if we can save you some money. I don't do that. I will quote you, but I also audit your policy. So send me your renewals and I will find problems. So what I have found over the years, first off, I do ask that any of these tips today on cottage issues, please share with other folks that might have a cottage. If you've got clients, please share with them as well too. Let's help protect as many people as we can. So I commonly see cottages as some of the consistently weakest policies that I ever see on a consistent basis. And sometimes I wonder, gee, did the home insurance company just throw it in as an add-on type of thing to the house? That's how weak some of these things are. So I really enjoy auditing the policies for these things. So today, cottages can be pretty sophisticated. Aside from secondary houses, these are 4 seasons quite commonly, or 3 seasons, of course. Values of these things have increased because of the pandemic. I found that people are investing in putting more into their cottages, making it more sophisticated, closer to a 4-season home. The Wi-Fi is becoming more accessible these days, so they're improving on that as well too. Another thing that I've seen influenced in the last while are something called floodplain mapping, and that's something that the insurance industry is looking at. Where historically are there floods as a result of water rising on lakes and rivers? So the example, for example, you remember a few years ago in Muskoka, there were quite a number of cottages that were damaged, and some of these were seasonal homes as well too, 4-season homes. So the point being, folks, is that because of this, climate change is really a real thing to be aware of.
So what should we be looking out for?
Well, the first things that we ask when we ask questions about your cottage, the same types of questions that we would ask for your house, the mechanicals. So, for example, things that you can't see behind walls, behind floors. How old is the electrical? How old is the plumbing? What type of material? A big thing about cottages is heating. How are they heated? What is the primary heat source, and then maybe secondary heat source? So quite often we see things like wood-burning fireplaces. We see wood-burning stoves. We see electrical baseboards and so on. So we have to know what you've got as a primary heating source. Anything that burns wood is a higher risk, as you can imagine. Also, log homes. Some of these may be cottages, some may be full 4-season homes. These things tend to burn a little faster than traditional homes for obvious reasons, and it does cost more money to rebuild these things as well. So there are specific questions that we have to ask about log homes as well. Number 2 that is important is contents. What's the stuff inside the cottage? Quite often, these are secondhand things that you no longer want to use at the house. But as I said earlier, today more and more people are investing quite a bit of money into furnishings and appliances and accessories and so on. So that is something that we want to think about as well too. I do recall last year when I audited somebody's home policy for their cottage, the total contents that they would be given if it was torched, for example, was about $32,000. She said, Larry, I've got a rug in there that's worth $5,000 on its own. So she was grossly underinsured for contents because nobody ever updated her and asked her questions about that. So imagine a $5,000 rug.
I know. So what about my deck and dock then?
Yeah, these are unique things that are specific to cottages. So when I talk to clients about their cottage, I ask detailed questions about these things. So number 1, how old are they? What material are they made of? Do the decks have glass rail systems? Because that increased the cost to replace it. The square footage. I want to know the material that's being used, the man-made material versus the natural wood material. I want to know what they paid for these things. I want to know how old they are. I suggest everybody keep receipts and take pictures of the receipts so they're always saved in the cloud. That way you can prove what you paid for these things.
Right.
Number 2, roofs. There are cottages that have a flat roof versus a pitched roof. And a flat roof is a higher risk because where does the water go? It sits there for quite some time, perhaps. So I ask people, do you know if your cottage coverage includes damage from the weight of ice and snow that can collapse roofs? A lot of cottages are not covered for that. Another thing, again, is renovations. And like the questions I asked for your house and your condo, companies want to know if you've done a renovation of 10K or more, generally speaking. Some of these renovations can be very, very expensive. So if you want to be reimbursed if something bad happens, they have to know what you've done over the last year or two. And finally, vandalism and theft. Now, this is something that most cottages do not have coverage on based on my experience. The companies I do work with have coverage for vandalism and theft and burglary. So because the cottages are generally more isolated, these are things to be considered as well too. Number 4, outbuildings. These are things like boathouses, and boathouses can be worth a lot of money. Same questions I asked above about material and age and so on. Some of these boathouses can be pretty high end as well too, with living accommodation in there as well. Another thing to think about is sheds. Same questions, but they could be quite large and relatively sophisticated. Number 3, a garage or a workshop. Same questions as above as well too, age, material, and so on. The other question that we have to ask is it heated? There's a lot of these structures that have heaters in them, propane, electric, or what have you. That is a source of a heat source is another risk. It's a higher risk of fire, so we have to know that. So imagine that your $100,000 garage/workshop that you just paid for burns down in a fire because it had a propane heater in it that was not hooked up properly. Theoretically, if you don't tell your insurance person and they don't record it, you could be out of pocket $100,000. That's not a good feeling. Yeah. Things like hot tubs, things like bunkies. Bunkies are becoming, again, more sophisticated. So I've seen policies I've audited where there's a kitchen and a bathroom, a little kitchenette and a bathroom in there. A lot of companies will say that's not a bunkie. That is a separate residence that you can actually live in as a standalone. So if that's the case with you or anybody you know, they may not be covered if something bad happens from that. And also, we can't get away with not talking about cost of materials. We know what the pandemic has done for cost of materials to rebuild. Supply chains are messed up. Inflation is crazy, 30-year high. The cost to rebuild has gone way up. Materials have gone way up, and labor has gone way up as well too. And anybody who knows anything about cottage country and trades, you know that it's a challenge to get trades that you can count on that are reliable up in cottage country. So it can be really crazy.
So liability, what if I'm sued if something bad happens at the cottage?
Now, this is something that most people don't talk about, and it really upsets me because generally speaking, cottages are quite often on water. They're on waterfronts, and water automatically is a higher risk. I tell everyone, one lawsuit can ruin your life. They're becoming more frequent. These settlements are becoming higher. So think about it. Cottages tends to be a little bit more alcohol going on up there, and so on. So most people may have $2 million liability if they're sued on their cottage property. I still see an old number of $1 million. In my opinion, $2 million, you are underinsured. And the example I give, for example, is that if somebody drinks too much, they stumble, they fall, they hit their head, they're in a wheelchair or a hospital bed for the rest of their life, you're going to be sued, and you're going to be sued for millions of dollars. And the younger that victim is, the more you're going to get sued for. So the courts will say, okay, if you've got $2 million and somebody successfully sues for $3 million, you are out of pocket for the $1 million. You've got to figure out how to pay the victims over time. And that may include things like garnishing your income and your wages after you sell all of your assets. And that is not good. So your company today might offer more than $2 million, but hey, did your insurance person discuss this specifically? I want to mention something called Standalone Umbrella. This is very, very important. So if a client or somebody wants more than the $2 million or what have you, I have a couple of companies I go to that can sell up to $10 million. So you buy it, usually buy it on your home, and it extends to other properties in your cars as well too, and a cottage as well. So your own personal insurance company might offer that, but I also have companies that I go to, and you don't have to have your home and auto with them. and you could buy up an extra $10 million to cover yourself, because these lawsuits are getting much, much bigger. The point I want to make here, Maureen, is that do not assume that you cannot be sued by a friend or a family member. If they have a catastrophic injury that I just mentioned above, you have to be sued for millions of dollars. They will have no choice.
Yeah, so have you seen any crazy things over the years that you can share with us?
Yeah, let's finish off on a lighter note here. So these are kind of, I got a chuckle out of these when I audited people's audits policies in the past for their cottage. One example, a broker insisted to the client, hey, let's just say that your cottage is within 13 kilometers of a fire station. And because that is the magic delineation point whereby you are fire hall protected and has a significant influence on your premium. The broker said, hey, let's say it's within 13. And the client said, it's 27 kilometers past. I'm not going to do that. I want to be reimbursed. So he fired that broker, actually. The next one is furnace. I looked at somebody's policy and it said furnace. And he said, I don't have a furnace. This is a 3-season property. And I showed him the paperwork. I said, look, it says you've got a furnace, which decreases the chance of frozen pipes, okay, which decreases your premium. So that could be a potential claim denied. And I'll save the best for last here. I saw another policy for a cottage that said fire hall protected, again, within 13 kilometers of the fire station. His cottage happened to be on an island.
I see.
It's impossible to have fire hall protected on an island. So I got a chuckle out of that one.
Yeah, that's funny.
We fixed that right away for that fellow.
All right. Thank you, Larry. So if you wish to know more about being properly protected, you can find Larry's contact information below, and also his calendar where you can schedule an online meeting. Thanks for watching, and remember to share this video with your friends so that you can be properly protected too. Thanks and take care.